Welcome to Military Faith and Spiritual Resilience. This is Elizabeth Fulgaro. With me today is Alexandra Siliezar, sister of former U.S. Marine Abraham Siliezar. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be back.
So, we've been talking about your brother and what an amazing man he was. One who didn't complain, was filled with love, calling you his sister, loving on his niece, being as connected as he could in so many different ways, but really having it hard ever since he was injured by a transient. So you had been sharing how one evening there was, you were on the phone where you tried to reach him, and later you found out the phone was off the hook. And he hadn't been feeling well that night, and you were worried. Can we start there and have you share what happened next?
Yes. That night, I called as much as I could, and the phone was busy, and I knew it was off the hook. It must have been close to 11:30-ish p.m., and I said, okay, just go to sleep, and I left it in God's hand. But I sent an email to his social worker because I thought, for any reason, even though it was a Sunday night, if by any chance the social worker would get into his email first thing in the morning, that he would see this ASAP before I could call him at whatever time he actually arrived at work. And I had let him know, would someone please take a look and do a welfare check on my brother because he was ill and not well, and would someone please take him to the hospital or send him home to the hospital by taxi or something. That morning, so I sent that email that night, Sunday night, but Monday morning, again, I continued to call my brother. I had to take my daughter to a camp, and I thought, okay, maybe I can, check in, the social worker should arrive by 9 a.m. and, someone will have eyes on my brother. I did get a hold of the social worker, and I asked if someone would do a welfare check. He himself would not be there that morning, he said, and he would have his supervisor check in on my brother. So I said, can somebody please, at least tell him his phone is off the hook and that his sister is trying to get a hold of him. And he gave me the phone number to the front desk. I called the front desk and I said, listen, this is, Abraham's sister. He's not well. Can somebody please go to his room and just check on him, see how he's doing? Or at least let him know his phone is off the hook and I need to get a hold of him. Can you please have him call me, I called twice to this day, but I don't think that anyone ever did go to his room. My brother, later on, I was provided with information that my brother was witnessed leaving his room around 10:26 in the morning. Then it was noted that he left the building, just a couple of minutes after that. This was all evidenced in video surveillance or video that the building security has. No one really told me for the next, few days at all anything. And that was a Monday. And I thought, okay, well, hopefully my brother will show up, that Monday night. I continued to call that Monday night. That Monday afternoon, there was a welfare check on him, but they said, oh, your brother left the room, as if, no big deal, he's just gone. And so I had to take that as it was. So that night I continued to call and his phone was off the hook and it became dark. And by this time, being a weeknight, I knew one of the staff that works there and I called him directly. And I said, would you please just check my brother's room? Would you please just do that? He could be on the floor and nobody's really noted. He went and he said, there's nobody there. He saw the phone off the hook and put the handset back on the receiver. And that was that. That was Monday night, and I was progressively worried, but I thought, well, maybe he's just in a hospital, and we just haven't found him. And I didn't say anything to anybody. I thought, this is just one of those times where he's in a hospital, and I just have to trust that's where he is. By Tuesday morning, I dropped off my daughter at camp in a different county, and I drove back to San Francisco. I went looking for him. I knew where Tuesdays he picked up his SSI check that he would get, and I was informed that he had not shown up. And I knew that was very, very unusual because, he's very prompt with getting his money and, it's his livelihood. So I thought, okay, he has to be in a hospital. He's nowhere. But I had called all the hospitals, and nobody had him. So I even called the police. Could he, for any reason, have gone with police somewhere? Nope, nothing. I became more and more worried. I started looking in places that he would normally go to. He, with his PTSD, he liked a lot of solitude, and he loved going to the park. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll find him in the park. And I didn't see him there. Needless to say, these agonizing thoughts and feelings grew more and more through the days, and then it became a week, and I thought, this is just not right. But by the second day, that Tuesday of August, I knew there was nothing good happening, so I went ahead and did a missing persons report. I walked into the police station, and again, he has the right to go anywhere, and he's, they sort of shrugged their shoulders, but I explained to them he was very ill and explained the situation, and I insisted, and I even had to call my brother's social worker while I was at the station, and I also called Adult Protective Services, and they all confirmed to the police, yes, he's a person at risk. And they gave me a number to follow up with at a different police station. So they said, call the next day because it'll take time for them to, process it. So I called that station the next day. That next day, that station said, oh, we don't have any case here. And, they said, you have to call another, the station that you filed the report. And I kept going back and forth for half of the morning. And I called APS, and I said, this is what's happening. I'm really worried for my brother. APS had to call the police with the assistance of Adult Protective Services. They were able to get the police to really, this is really a serious situation. And then somewhere along the line, I found the missing persons a phone number for San Francisco. They have a special unit for that, for people at risk. And so I called, but it took, I think, from the time that he went missing, which was a Monday, August 10th, to the time that I actually connected with someone. It could have been either Thursday or so of that week. And by the time they really took in my information, it had been a few days, several days. Now, people just think people are just going to show up. And I get it, but not someone with a very severe traumatic brain injury as my brother's, and as ill as he was. I knew that he was not well. But I had hoped, and I had faith, and I prayed. And I thought, the police themselves said, well, you reported him missing, some time ago. And I said, and he was, I found him in a hospital, and the hospital had not disclosed to me that he was there.
This is a previous time.
At a previous time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I'm hoping that he's at a hospital. But, I started making missing person flyers. And that was hard, but I knew that this was different. This was not just him being missing in a hospital. I felt something different. And I started posting on social media, and a couple of girlfriends reached out, and they offered their support. And God just knew the right women to send to me. And they came, and were there 1,000% for me. And, trying to get media attention is tough as well. So we were very blessed. Someone from a local newspaper in San Francisco heard of the story, and she published it. And then I reached out to another reporter through my cousin, who had himself a nice little piece in the newspaper for his sidekick shows that he does. And this nice young lady heard of the story, and she published it. And also the local news station published or aired our story that we were looking for my brother. And I thought, sure enough, we have ears now. We're gonna get my brother. We're gonna find him. Someone's gonna answer. Time went on. It didn't happen. I kept in contact with the police. I was cautious not to overwhelm them. I know they have only like 2 people doing this work in a very busy, big city. But I wanted to let them know, hey, this is serious. This is not someone that just took a trip, And he would have had no money. I mean, he had no money, so there's no way he would be somewhere. The hope was that he probably had a seizure and forgot who he was and could be somewhere in the streets of San Francisco. People said maybe a good Samaritan has him, and I knew that how gravely ill he was, that a good Samaritan would take him to the hospital. And then other people would say, well, maybe he's just with some people. And as I looked for him, people would say, oh, I saw him at this corner. He's in this tent with this other person, or he's this. And I would go. Just, I knew it never sounded like something he would do, but I would go nonetheless, because why not? And I learned, of course, it was never him. People thought that he would be that person or that person. And the more that the media had the news out, I would get calls from strangers saying, I saw him and he was belligerent on the stage. It was never him. But you always hope that, hey, I'll take that belligerent person. If that's him, I'll take him, but it was never him. And I provided my own my own DNA, I should say. I provided my DNA just in case. Probably a month into him being missing.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the fact that this happened, I think, August of 2020, in the middle of COVID?
Yes.
And the pandemic? How did that complicate things?
Oh, extremely. I mean, that was one of the reasons I couldn't come into his building. Mm-hmm. I imagine that people are going to think, well, why didn't you just go to knock on his door? Mm-hmm. I was not allowed to go into the building. Mm-hmm. I was not allowed to go see him. If I had seen him, it would be outside. And actually had seen him a week before to drop off some groceries and toiletries. And I had to meet him out on the sidewalk, So, yeah, it was not easy. And as well, we were in the beginning of protocols being placed everywhere where people were told, even if you have COVID, stay home unless you can't breathe. So I thought, well, when I had talked to him that night, August 9th, and I had asked him, do you have a fever? Do you have this? Do you have that? The only thing I had forgotten to ask him is, were you breathing? How's breathing happening for you, But I have a feeling that at the hospital, there were big signs, big poster boards saying, if you have these symptoms, go home and call your doctor and, see what they say. So that symptom list said, are you coughing? And do you have a fever? Are you vomiting? Do you feel dizzy? Do you have diarrhea? It had all these different symptoms. And they would ask people to read that list. And if you had that, it would say, go call your home doctor, your physician. So I don't know if my brother made it to the hospital, looked at that sign, was told to read it, probably said yes to most of those, and was told to go home and call the doctor.
Because they thought maybe he had COVID-19.
Could be.
Yeah, it's a possibility. So you're looking for him. How are you juggling life?
I worked.
How are you doing life?
Yes, I worked as a single mom full time until I couldn't work anymore because I could not go to work and be posting posters throughout San Francisco. And let me tell you one thing. I see a lot of missing pet signs, the same pet signs. I don't know why they and how they stay. But I put a missing human being and they would be torn down overnight. I printed about 2,000 flyers throughout San Francisco. They were always ripped away. They only have 2 officers investigating missing persons in San Francisco. And apparently it's a very big problem, especially in a big city like San Francisco. I would have never known. But they have a very active and full caseload. They're beautiful. I have nothing more than respect for those 2 officers, especially, the person who was assigned to my case, lovely human being. But perhaps they just don't have enough manpower to do what they need to do. I asked for those dogs that follow scents. I was told, no, we don't have that. I was told about Nixle, if you know about Nixle.
I don't. What is that?
It's a little app that you put in. I think you dial 877. I might be incorrect, so please forgive me. But you dial a number, you text it. You text to that number, and you just text your zip code, and it goes to this database. And so from now on, whenever you have a crisis in that area, whether it's a fire, a power outage, a missing person, everyone in that area gets notified. Hey, there's a missing person in this area. There's a fire. Don't go to that area. Or there's a power outage. But it's an emergency number. I asked the officers, can we do a Nixle report? Because that would just go to everyone on their cell phone. This person meets this description, is missing. Mm-hmm. If everyone had that, the moment it went missing, if I have that person next to me, I would say, I have that person. Mm-hmm. It's right here. He's right here. They said they did not know how to do that. I couldn't believe that a big city like San Francisco didn't have the ability to disseminate information about a missing person. I walked. So you asked me, how do I do life? I stopped working. This became my job. I would drop my daughter to school, and with her not knowing what was going on, and Mommy would go to work looking for her brother, driving through every alleyway I could think of San Francisco, talking to people, carrying a poster. Have you seen my brother? Have you seen my brother? My brother's missing. Going into areas that were very scary, but knowing that the purpose was greater, fear meant nothing. And I talked to people and they responded well. They would say, I'll keep an eye on him, or I'll pray for your brother. And I even had a couple of unhoused people call me. They still have a phone sometimes, and they call me, have you found your brother? And that was really touching. Yes. And I found an unhoused person, and I believe in the streets of Berkeley. And he told me that he had not talked to his mom for years and not seen his family for years. But after my search, he was inspired to reach out to them.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was blessed incredibly by speaking to other missing people. By that, I mean people who disappeared from their own families for whatever their circumstances.
And you're talking to them about your brother.
And I'm speaking to them about my brother, and they have not seen their families, and how they were inspired to reach back and be in touch and let them know that they were still okay somewhere or somehow, or say, I don't know how to find my family, what can I do? And helping them be in contact with police or
What an
phone
amazing
numbers.
blessing you were in your search. They to you and you to them. That's really something.
Yes, and I think when we talk about the quote unquote homeless population, the homeless problem, quote unquote, which I hate hearing those words. There's not a homeless problem. There's a problem of lack of communication and support and compassion. We have a compassion problem, not a homeless problem. We have a trauma epidemic, not a drug epidemic, because a lot of the people suffering in the streets are suffering because there's so much trauma and lack of compassion combined. We've lost touch with God, and we've lost touch with humanity, that we see problems versus seeing a human person. And so I knew that even if my brother were in the streets of San Francisco on his last breath, that people would just see a homeless problem or just see a person probably drugged out and overdosed on the street, not knowing that it was far, far from that. And I was trying to bring humanity into every person's eye and say, if you see this person, he may not look well, he might be dirty, he might be belligerent, but that may be my brother. Please talk to him because he's gentle. Please reach out to him because he needs help. Don't just walk over him, as I see hundreds of people being walked over on a daily basis. I knew that that was not my brother, and yet, whether we're jaded or not, survival, denial, whatever it is, I was told, sort of like, not, and I'm paraphrasing, but people like him, they know how to survive. And I would look at the police and I'm thinking, no, you have no idea. People like my brother don't know how to survive. And what do you mean by people like him? There is no people like him. Are you talking about people who have been on house for 10 years, for 5 years, and they sort of survive? That's not my brother. He was never that person. And he's gravely disabled. And he would never go missing without calling me if he could. If he would remember, he would say, please help me call my sister. And that was never the case. And trying to drive that attention to the police, to the investigators, was very hard. And I knew they cared, and they were amazing. I don't want to minimize. And again, I don't want to speak for them, but more needed to be done. And I don't know if they just did not have the tools to do it.
That's something. Let's continue next time.
Thanks.